Okay, welcome back. Episode number, Brandon?
99.
It prompts me to want to sing a song, like 99 episodes of Mastering Modern Selling on the wall.
Keep going, Carson. Keep going.
I
Let's
love
go.
having you on
99
the show with
episodes
that.
of Mastering Modern Selling.
You take one down, pass it around.
Around.
98
Well,
episodes.
so Carson, what does that mean for next week?
Well, that means next week is episode 100, and we are welcoming back the gentleman who was in episode 50, the king of social selling, Daniel Disney. I'm excited. I just got back from Disney, and I don't know if I'm more excited about Daniel Disney or Walt Disney, but man, I can't believe 100 episodes, guys. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great. Well, and it's before we jump into this, and I'm really excited about today's topic. I think it's extremely valuable for everybody. And aloha to Bob who joined us. But we started this going. I had my fledgling little show that I had Tom come on as a guest when he first launched Revenue Zone book. And then Tom's like, hey, you got to get Carson on. And I didn't know Carson at the time. So I had Carson come on. And then I'm like, well, let's get both of you on. And then we're like, hey, let's do it again. And then it was like, hey, why don't we just do this for a while and see how it works? And that was 99 episodes ago with a couple different name changes as we pivoted and trying to find
almost causing legal action. I mean, we've been through it on this show,
Right. I mean, we were just inches away from being wiped out legally. So.
And I got to tell you, we've got guests coming up that will knock your socks off. I mean, it's just can't wait for the next 100.
Yeah. Well, we've had some guests that knock your socks off, right? I mean,
Ren and Larry Levine, whose book just launched this week. Mike Weinberg.
Yeah, Larry plugged Larry's new book that just launched this week. Yeah.
So I don't know if I haven't kept up on all the messages, but I think we have 100 more guests now booked for the next 100 episodes.
Close. Yeah,
we have a lot. Yeah, it's when Nora's talking to potential guests, going, "How is May 2025 look on your calendar?"
We'll still be selling stuff in May.
That's right.
Stuff will still need to be sold.
That's right.
Selling will still be modern in May. I promise.
That's right. So, well, welcome everybody, and we got Bob. But anyone else, if you're first time to the show on the podcast or on live. If you're live, man, join us in the comments. We bring your comments up. We make you part of the show. We answer your questions. We comment on your funny stuff, whatever it's going to be. We've had one person that kind of trolled us one time. That was fun. Yeah. We haven't had that for a while. Maybe we'll get a troll today. Who knows?
Could be. You never know. Yeah. I feel like we're almost like bringing up the greatest hits today. It's like I feel nostalgic.
That's right. I mean, don't forget about
partying like it's episode 99 here. So.
Don't forget about Lorraine on Carson's birthday. I mean, come on.
That's right.
You only got a couple months to book Biff.
That's right. We're working on it. All
right.
He's going to be a full-on guest.
Oh. I mean, he was a business guy. He was selling George on doing his work for him. So.
That's right. That would be fun if we could get one of them to come on live.
All right, Brandon. So pull some strings and make it happen.
I'll work on it.
There you go.
Work it.
All right. So what are we talking about today?
Hey, timing on this was exceptional, I think, because we had planned that today we're going to talk about personal branding. We're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about reputations. And the three of us are going to talk about some of the different things that we do and that have helped call it your personal brand, call it your reputation. But it's the things that we do to network. And as I like to say, business is always about who do you know and who knows you. And that is really
Bob Maxwell Smart.
That's right. Get smart. Yeah.
Sorry.
You missed it.
Distracted by useless pop culture references.
So we're going to talk about that, but I want to preface it with last week. And if you didn't see episode 98 with Alice Hyman, you owe it to yourself to go listen to that because Alice brought a ton. And I loved how we started that episode, and she talked about CEOs being a sales preventer. which is probably the worst thing in the world a CEO would ever want to be said about them. And as she talked about, a lot of times they do it without realizing that they're doing it. But there was a part in there about halfway through where I asked her about LinkedIn, because a lot of CEOs will say, "Oh, I don't have time for this," or "Oh, that's just social media. It doesn't really do anything." And Alice had a very strong, a very bold statement that was basically, and we've got a clip of it, but I don't think we can show it. But it was really of her saying, "Look, if you are a CEO and you are not, or even executive, Carson, you brought that up, even just executives in a company, and you are not taking advantage of LinkedIn and building your personal brand and elevating the company brand through your personal brand, then you are a sales preventer. You are hurting your company if you are not doing it." And then we had scheduled the next week to talk about personal brand and CEOs and executives leveraging LinkedIn. And so the timing was great. If you're listening to this and you've got the excuses of, "Oh, I don't have time," or "This doesn't work," or "I tried it a few years ago," or the one that I've been hearing lately is, "Oh, LinkedIn's ruined because of all the direct messages." If any of those are your excuses, I encourage you to listen and hear what we have to talk about with some of the tactics that either work for the three of us or work for some of our clients that should get you thinking and get rid of some of your excuses. Actually, get rid of all your excuses. How's that for a setup, gentlemen?
Oh, I love it. I mean, look, while you're talking, Brandon, I mean, I'm thinking about it, and I think you're spot on. I think a lot of people, C-levels, executives, they're going to be thinking of themselves, my old tried and true methods are good enough. My Rolodex is good enough. It's more than social media. It's more than a networking tool. It's a platform for leadership and influence. And whether it's you galvanizing your workforce and leading by example, all the way to how we've explored on this show, how leads are flowing into organizations where the C-levels get it and are leading by example on social media, on LinkedIn, on social media. Mm-hmm. Leads are flowing in as a result of that, and that's a unique nuance. Leads don't necessarily flow in just because I'm making my daily post. We've got platforms, and I think we're going to talk about that on this show today, kind of how we've leveraged books, ebooks, podcasts, things of that stature to build that brand. CEOs and executives, they have a very unique ability to leverage this to their organizations and their teams' advantages, and they would be remiss to discriminate against that part of their audience. It's that simple.
I loved it when Alice said, "You have a CEO title. Leverage it," because everybody wants to talk to the CEO, right? They have an account manager or whatever their title is, and people are like, but you have a CEO title. And I always equate that back to at a trade show or at some sort of a conference, we start scheduling meetings. What do salespeople do? "Oh, CEO, could you come join me with this client?" Because we want to go back to the client or the prospect and say, "Our CEO is going to join us." Why? The CEO brings so much credibility to it. We want, we leverage them, their name, their title to get prospects to come speak with us. We have this platform called LinkedIn and other social media tools. I think YouTube is very powerful as well, that we can be doing this 24 hours a day.
And if you don't know what to do or what to post with it, go out and follow a few prolific CEOs. I used to work in the healthcare space, and I had some very large med device organizations. I go out and I follow their CEOs. They were very prolific on LinkedIn, and I rung the bell, so I was notified every time they made a post. And I just personally, I was using it to get meetings with them. I was commenting on their posts, and I ended up using that, parlaying that into ultimately getting meetings with these CEOs. But if you're an executive and you want to know kind of a blueprint, go out and follow some of these prolific C-levels. See what they're saying, how they're engaging, from how they're talking about innovation that's happening in their organization, recognizing their people, putting posts out, recognizing their teams. These things motivate and inspire their internal organizations, but they also show how these organizations are leading the charge in their desired industry and solution area. You can do that too.
But I think we should hit, before we kind of go into some of the mechanics here, why is this the case, right? Why did Alice say that not being out there is sales prevention? Right? Why is that the case? And, it comes back to what I talk about in my book, right? Is the revenue zone is composed of two things. It's building trust and creating demand. And what I have certainly learned, even since writing the book, is creating demand for my product and service is so much easier if I've got that foundation of trust and know, like, and trust in place versus trying to create demand when nobody knows who the hell you are or why they should, care about you. It's not that you can't do it. It's just harder, which, and again, is a sales prevention activity.
Tom, I know you kind of wanted to do this in stages, but could you explain, like, because of this show and your other show, what happens in your first conversations with prospective clients? This is really important for people to understand. We're not just blowing smoke. This isn't like, oh, we go do some things on social media and good things happen. Like, this is very tangible.
Yeah, well, Mike, the company that I work with most of the time, LeadSmart, right, it's a software company in a very vertical market. So we only sell to manufacturers and wholesale distributors. So it's very vertically focused. And that market is also very relationship based. It's a big market, but there's a lot of relationship in there. So when we created the other show that I'm a co-host of called Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution, what we do each week in that show on LinkedIn is we talk about the news and what's going on in that industry. And we just actually celebrated our 100th episode a few weeks ago. So we've been at it now for a while as well. But it's myself and that's right, fist bump. It's myself and my partner. We do this and we bring on guests from time to time, but we review the news. We have a newsletter that goes out and we review the news, technology news, and so forth. The point being is, right, we probably have on any given week several thousand people in that industry that are exposed to that through the podcast or through LinkedIn through that show. Kevin, my partner, who is just at a show coming home right now as we speak, right, when he goes into a show or even gets on a phone call with a prospect, the majority, pardon?
In a live trade show.
A live trade show. Yeah, live trade show. But even if he gets on the phone or we get on the phone, the majority of the time, not always, but the majority of the time is the way they'll start off is, hey, we really love your show. We enjoy your show. Appreciate it. And it's your thing, Brandon. They already feel like they know us. And what happens is the quality then of the conversation as it relates to sales and the prospect goes way up, right? Because we're not walking on eggshells and it's like everybody feels like they're friends almost. And so the quality of everything then goes up. And it doesn't mean everybody buys, but you don't get ghosted as much. If they're not going to buy, they end up saying they're not. I mean, they communicate or whatever the case may be, because the relationship is there. And that all came from that show. And that's just one way of using LinkedIn, right? It's not the only way of using LinkedIn and social.
I mean, look, you've got this unique opportunity, whatever your role, but especially for executives, where you can engage your audience in a number of ways. I mean, right now we're in election season, and what candidates wouldn't give to have this direct opportunity to speak directly to their audience. You have it every single day. And, some people, and I want to hit Bob's comment here in a moment and get your thoughts on it, because it's very poignant. By and large, he's thinking a lot of CEOs' egos get in the way of them engaging authentically on LinkedIn. And I think there's a definite true element to that. I think the key element, though, is every executive should want to open doors any which way they can, and to have this opportunity to speak directly to their audience and engage those folks, and a lot of times at scale. And there was a comment you made earlier, Brandon, people shy away from this because, the inboxes are flooded and things of that stature. But, we've all had, business relationships, personal relationships that have not gone the way we've wanted them to. It doesn't stop us from going out and pursuing new ones. And I think that's the key element, is there's some gold in them hills. And we've got to make sure that we are figuring out ways that we're comfortable with. I've explored just about every avenue, whether it be, we've talked on this show, TikTok, Instagram, a WordPress blog, Spotify, where I put my own podcast. And now I'm on a couple of different shows, and it's different avenues, but it's amazing. Like when I talk to someone, people reach out to me all the time, and my calendar's full. And when I jump on a call with them, they're like, "Well, I feel like I'm on your podcast. Like and I love that thing you said about blank." It's that recognition. And I want to hit on the CEO ego thing and get your two thoughts on this. Regardless of a CEO's ego, I mean, personally, I think there are ways that even if you've got an ego, you can play this to your advantage. Wouldn't you want to? I mean, I don't like the vanity stats chasing, and I know we've talked about that on the Darren McKee show. Maybe a CEO would be, more interested in vanity stats, but I think the key element is, even as an ego-driven CEO, don't you want to use your clout and your pride in your company or in your team to go out and create some net new conversations? I can't tell you how many times I've leveraged executive presence to go out and get meetings that I couldn't get. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when an executive comes to town and wants to meet with your customers, a lot of times we as sellers, we put our boss in front of the ones that are going to say all these rave things about us as sellers. Oh, I love Carson. He's great. Nope. I go out to the customers that won't give me the time of day, and I say, I have this unique opportunity to get you in front of this C-level or this VP level. They're going to be the ones who are reviewing investments we want to make in the future, discounts we want to approve in the future, et cetera. You better believe they take those meetings. The C-level, the VP level, there is a inherent ability to leverage that title, and you've got to use it, ego-driven or not.
But wouldn't Brandon, what is your tagline be everybody knows you, and what are the two things everybody knows?
I see you everywhere, and I feel like I already know you.
What better way if you have an ego, wouldn't that basically lend to your ego? I mean, if you're walking through a show or a hotel or whatever, and somebody reaches out to you, and so, I mean, I can't imagine it would play right into if your ego, I mean, heck, look at Brandon. I mean, he's got the biggest ego I know, and look at how
everybody knows Brandon when they see him.
Right.
I mean, hell, I have people walk up to me asking me, Brandon.
Right.
Oh my gosh. We got from episode 101 on, we got to come up with a new talk track around that.
It's so good. We got to keep goosing it.
I know you're allowed to. You guys are just jealous that you weren't on Back to the Future.
I am. I wasn't old enough, but
right. Oh, wow. I like that backhanded compliment. That's good. Hey, look, I want to address the ego thing, because Bob, I disagree with you. I don't think it's so much ego. I think it's fear and ignorance. And there is some ego in it as well, I'm sure. But look, I think they have a misperception, and I talk about the false beliefs around LinkedIn or social media. They tend to think that social media is self-promotion, and they want to stay away from it, because then it seems like they are pushing their own agenda, and I have an ego. I think it's a bit of an education in realizing that this isn't self-promotion, it's brand promotion, leveraging the title that you carry. And the way I try to get people to think about this, thank you, is, and it depends on the era that you grew up in, but if I say the company, Carson, hold on. If I say the company Microsoft, who do you think of?
My CEO.
Right. But in other people might say Bill Gates. If you say Apple, who do you think of?
Jobs, Tim Cook.
I say SpaceX, who do you think of?
Elon.
Right? Say Virgin, who do you think of?
Yeah, Branson.
Right. What they did is they leveraged their personal brand, their reputation, because you can connect better with a human being than you can a brand. So they leverage their personalities, their reputation, their personal brand, in order to elevate their companies. And just because they're large enterprise, multi-billion-dollar companies, your $5 or $10 million company or $50 million company, the same rules apply. And we know that it's true because if you've gone to the same trade show for 5, 6, 10, 20 years, When you go there and you walk around and everybody knows you as a CEO, what does that do for your team? Well, it gives them confidence, it gives them pride. They get more people say yes to have meetings with them. Your HR person, when they're reaching out and recruiting somebody, they go, "Oh, I know who your CEO is. Yeah, tell me more." It opens up so many opportunities for your company. We just have to get rid of these false beliefs. It's not self promotion, it's brand promotion. The other thing is, it's not your kids' social media. We're not saying do duck faces and be all me, 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 me. We're not influencers on Instagram. You're being influential. And Carson, to what you said earlier, and I thought of this is, and I love this one. If somebody just think for this for a second, if you go to a conference and you spend a whole bunch of sponsorship dollars to have a breakout session and be on stage, you're paying 25 grand, you pay 40 grand, you pay more, whatever that price point is. When you have a show on LinkedIn and you have a place that you can publish content every single day and be in front of tens of thousands of people for free.
I love it. Something else too, Brandon. I mean, you called out one of the big inhibitors, and that's the time restraints, or even just finding the right tone, not knowing what to say. And I would challenge C-levels, executives today that have those thoughts. First off, it's not as big of a time constraint as you think. There are ways to scale the content, and what I mean by that is, something that I may put out on LinkedIn may also go out on my blog, on Spotify, on WordPress, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, you name it. So it's a way to touch all of those potential audiences. And not all of them are going to be relevant for your business, but some of them may. And the other element is finding even ways to broaden your horizon. I did a presentation about a month ago to a group called the Leadership Development Program that we have at my company. And what I love about it is, this is something that I wish was more prominent in other organizations, but it's basically taking a group of individual contributors. They're nominated every year by their leaders, and they go through a full, course, a full curriculum. And I did a presentation on brand and on career progression. And one of the things that I talked about was how some of these types of things, the different ways that you can do these things to engage. And what I actually did from this is I took the transcript of that call and I was able to turn it into multiple social posts in seconds flat with AI. And, you tag a picture with it or a quick video or something like that. There are ways that your content can continue to touch lives, engage meaningfully, and have the desired intent at scale without you really lifting much of a finger. And that's what I challenge people to look at. These are things that you couldn't have done a year or two ago, but now we can. And so I challenge you to think about how you can, take that YouTube video or that interview that you did a year ago, take some of those golden nuggets and present them to today's audience. Because here's the thing, being on LinkedIn is a great way to develop the trust and credibility with your audience that you seek. And you can do it very easily, and it doesn't take near as much time as you think it does.
Carson, that's excellent, and you're so spot on. I love it, and I think Jeff Leisure. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for joining us today too. His question, I think, lends to that as well. Is there a better ROI to a CEO than being visible? And there is, and I want to answer that in a second. But Carson, you're talking about they're scared or they have an ego. My pushback, I believe it speaks. The CEO's hesitation, trying to get my brain around this, the CEO's hesitation has more to do with Jeff's question than anything, I believe. They haven't connected the dots to the value proposition more than just, oh, you want me to be visible on LinkedIn.
It's an investment.
It's an investment, and it's a strategic investment, and it's a targeted investment. It's top to middle of the funnel, yes, to speak to Bob's question about their bias towards immediate response. I get that. It is top to middle of the funnel, but if they started to understand and really took time, I find a lot of times CEOs I was introduced to somebody last week before, it was a CEO, and said, "Oh, you got to talk to Brandon about this LinkedIn stuff." And when I got in an email exchange with him, he didn't even want to hear it. It's like, "Oh yeah, we tried LinkedIn before, it didn't work." Well, what the hell does that mean? What did you do? When did you do it? Like, there's a lot of things that don't work. That's like saying,
I tried dating and it didn't work, so I stopped.
exactly. I tried cold calling and I put my 4-year-old daughter on the phone and it didn't work, so the phone doesn't work, right? It's if you had an issue with your supply chain, you would go figure out how to fix it. If you start to understand, peel back the onions and go, where is the value of this beyond being visible? Then you go fix it and you invest in it. So, Jeff, let me pause. I've been talking a lot. Do you guys want to answer Jeff's question?
Well, I'll weigh in a little bit on that. And it comes back, and I want your take on this, Brandon and Carson, from what you've seen. But remember, I said before, right? It's a lot easier as an executive to make, or for your company to make sales if, in fact, you're known, right? And there's trust in who you are. I would suspect that carries over to other parts of the business. It carries over to recruiting. It carries over to employee retention. It carries over to really all aspects of what your responsibility is as a CEO or an executive, right, in that business. So you talk about an ROI. The ROI goes beyond the dollar and cents of the sales. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to remove friction for your sales team. It's going to potentially remove friction for your recruiting and your HR teams. It's going to just it's a foundation that I'm not sure there is a better ROI holistically for a CEO than being present and having that personal brand recognition.
That's a really good point, Tom. I mean, look, I'm nobody, and I post a lot of stuff, and mostly I tell stories. I tell stories about things that I've learned through the years, and experiences that I've had in leadership and with teams and building cultures. What this does is this enables you to create a destination culture, people that will ultimately reach out.
Well
I
said,
can
yeah.
tell you how many people that I don't even know who they are, and they're reaching out to me saying, "Hey, love to connect with you, have you mentor me, would love to work for you," type of thing, only because of this opportunity. Now, think about at a CEO level, if they're doing that and they're going in and they're talking about stories and the culture that they're so proud of, and they're highlighting and spotlighting their people and the innovative things that their organization is doing, how is that going to hurt? I mean, here's the thing. One of the biggest challenges that we have sometimes as organizations is standing apart from the crowd, standing apart from the competition. And if your C-level is going out there and touting this amazing culture and the competition isn't, guess who's going to get the interested parties?
Mm-hmm.
I want to put a little bit more meat on this, Jeff. And here's the challenge with a better ROI answer. It takes work to understand the ROI. And most teams just say, "Oh, we don't have time, so we don't do it." I mean, when I first started getting involved with looking at LinkedIn in like 2016, 2017, the marketing teams would say, "Well, we need ROI. We need ROI. I need to know what the ROI is if we're going to give these posts to people." And then when you talk about how to actually get the ROI, they would say, "Oh, we don't have the time to do that." It's like, well, wait a minute. Do you want to see if this really works, or are we just making a convenient decision about implementing this or not? And I think Jeff Walker does, not Jeff Walker, Chris Walker. He talks about this a lot, and he's doing some amazing stuff for companies. You've got to put in the systems to ask, where did you hear about us? And you've got to track, because what may happen is your CEO has a show or is a guest on someone else's show, and somebody listens to that podcast in 2 months from the time that it was recorded, and they go, "Oh, what's the name of that?" Or, listen to it, and they know the company name, and then they go do a Google search for the company, and they click it. Sorry, they do a Bing search, and they click it, and they go to the company. Well, digital marketing goes, attribution is search. Our SEO did it, but it wasn't your SEO. It was your CEO, because they're prolific on LinkedIn. They have their own show. They're getting invited to be guests on other people's shows. It's raising the brand. So it doesn't have to be that tough to measure. but it is. And it reminds me is Juan Pablo, who was our guest a few weeks ago, he commented on one of my posts, I don't know, a week or so ago, and he said, we do all the matrix. Whenever our CEO gets media, every department in our company benefits, and we have data to prove it. They actually track the data because they want to know. And guess what they do? A big part of their marketing effort is around getting their CEO more media attention because they've tracked the data and realized how much it elevates every other department in the company.
Now, and Jeff, you make a great point. It's tough to measure the benefit and it's rarely immediate. That's very true. But there are ways to do it. And I would encourage any organization to at least starting to create some type of mechanism to track these things. And Brandon, you talked a couple of times about, the value of having a show. I was mentoring somebody earlier today and I was talking about like getting them on shows. This is a VP level individual. They're trying to, really build their brand. And I was talking to them about like how I started getting on shows. I literally went out and I started sending emails to people. I looked up sales podcasts and I started sending emails to the producers of or the hosts of the most prominent shows. I got yeses from Jeb Blunt, Jeffrey Gitomer right out of the gate. I mean, I was on these guys' shows years ago when I was literally a nobody. And then a tide turned after a couple of years and I'd never asked to be on a show again. It was always me getting requests. But my point is, you're right. These things are not immediate. But I challenge you to look at the things that are feasibly possible. Another thing I told this gentleman this morning, I'm like, this person is on some shows. They've done a lot of content. They're starting to, make a lot more prominent posts. Cultivate this stuff together. Make an ebook. Now you're a published author. Like there are things that you can do that continue to be investments in your brand. And to Brandon's point, like you're not going to necessarily be able to attribute every single one of these things to what you're doing. However, as you start to have some of these conversations and you're asking the question, hey, how did you get engaged? Or, when you get the messages from prospects and things of that nature, and you're digging in a little bit more to find out, one of the biggest things that one of my greatest mentors ever instilled in me was, Carson, it's great that you're this great social seller, but what does that mean for anybody beyond yourself? As you continue to build your brand and your value to your company, you want to think about how you're realizing outcomes, but also having broader impact. And so I started tracking anywhere I could, and not all of it's tangible evidence, but anywhere I could, I would track the tangible evidence and outcomes of the things that I was doing, whether it was for my peers, for colleagues, now internationally. I contribute things to global audiences within my organization, and I can track these things sometimes by even just soliciting them based on what they're getting, what signals are they getting. And the last thing I would say on this is revenue and year over year growth are also great barometers of, hey, if I'm doing a lot of these things and I'm seeing the revenue and the growth, I've got to get sold on the process at the end of the day. But if you're seeing the gains that you want to see and you're putting yourself out there in all the areas where your audience can be, that's a net positive, period.
Well, I'll just piggyback on what you're saying about revenue. There are 3 KPIs that we started measuring about a year ago related to this. And it's interesting. None of these are attribution. These are outcomes. So there were 3 things. What were the number of opportunities that we had come in that close at a higher than a 25% close rate? So in other words, high quality opportunities that close at least at 25% rate or better. 2, what was the value of those opportunities? And 3, what were the speed of which they closed, the velocity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 things together. I mean, let's think about it. Almost, if you look at any business, right, what do we want? We want higher quality opportunities. We want higher dollars, and we want faster results. That's what we want. So we measure those things, not that we can attribute anything specifically. Oh my God, that guy watched our shows, so therefore. But if you look at holistically what we've been doing, the results that we're seeing on those, and the value and the average contract value was up over 100% in the last year.
Wow.
Right.
That's a huge. I mean, let's pause there for a second because that's not something to just say and move on. The average contract value grew by 100% as you've done a show for 2 years.
Pretty much, right? And the velocity hasn't velocity, the speed of from initial contact to close has sped up some, but not to that level of meaning. But the number of higher quality opportunities, I believe, was up 40 or 50% in the average contract value, with pretty much the exact same marketing. From it wasn't like we tripled our marketing budget or anything like that. Now, there's nothing I can attribute that to, right? I can't go and say he watched that episode, so. But if you just look at the outcomes, right, then you have to trust and believe that the foundation of that trust helped create the demand. People are willing to spend more money and do more things faster.
Some of the
And
parts.
And Jeff, I would say too, some of the tangible ones you can start looking at is you can look at your analytics and visits to your website. You can look at opportunities that are created or even conversations that are started. You can tangibly look at inbound leads that come in to either the CEO or someone on the team that says, "Hey, I've been following you and I'm curious about this." Like we have a client, a fist bump client of ours, who landed their biggest client. I think it was 6 years, their biggest contract in 6 years. And somebody walked into their booth, and we did a program around driving traffic to their booth with LinkedIn content and some paid ads. But the guy walked right into the booth. He looked and he said, "I've been paying attention to your videos. I'm really curious about this, and I've been waiting for the show to talk to you." And of course, my client kind of looked at me like, "You said that was going to happen," and it happened. And then several months later, they closed their largest contract in 6 years, I believe it was. So, Jeff, there's a lot of easy ways to be able to track the ROI too by looking at some of the typical attribution points. But you also need to be a little bit, I guess, deliberate and ask some of those questions. And I could tell stories of, we have a client that we've been serving now for a little while, and I even spoke at an event for them, but it was their enterprise sales leader sent me a connection request, said, I've listened, somebody introduced me to your show, I've listened to the last few episodes, I'd love a chat. And then, 3, 4 conversations later, they're a fist bump client. They asked me to speak at one of their events, but it came from the show, and it's trackable. I can show you the initial connection request that came in from it. So it's not impossible. I think the key is, do you really believe that there's value, and are you really doing the research to understand the value? I still think, going back to Bob's initial about ego, I think there's a hangover of 10 years ago, we hired a LinkedIn trainer to come in and do a half-day session, and we all changed our LinkedIn profiles and nothing happened. Well, yeah, it was a waste of money. It didn't work, but that's not what we're talking about. And we use some employee advocacy tool, and we had posts that were created. Now, first of all, I find a lot of marketing departments, they create content that's more like a billboard. It's like a brochure. It's trying to sell product. And when you publish that to your personal account, that's like walking up to a prospect in a networking event or at a bar at a conference and just putting your brochure in their face and not having a chat, not having a conversation. But there's some of these old hangovers that they still have in the back of their head, and they just go, no, 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 we tried it and we didn't work. It didn't work. It's like, well, that was 10 years ago.
yeah, I think to your point, Brandon, there is a lot of evidence that you can spot if you're looking for it after a while. Are you going to be able to get like an attribution report like you can dump out of a Google ad or a LinkedIn ad or whatever? And no, but there's a lot of evidence that you can see developing that is showing what you're doing is actually working. Unfortunately, or whatever, that evidence sometimes takes a little time to materialize. It doesn't happen after the first day or the first week on there. I wanted to hit Bob's most recent comment here. He says, isn't this just really just a matter of a chosen marketing mix? Everyone has a different ratio of channels, some way LinkedIn more heavily than others. I mean, they're wrong for not engaging in LinkedIn on their roadmap. I have a take on this. I'm interested in you guys' take on this as well. I don't look at LinkedIn or let's just not even call it LinkedIn. Let's call it personal brand building as a channel. I look at that as a foundation of which then I can build channels on for other purposes and other marketing campaigns. So I don't see LinkedIn and personal brand building as a marketing channel, but a foundational element, again, of which then I can build other campaigns on. Am I looking at this right?
I mean, I think of all the possible ways that LinkedIn could be leveraged for a CEO or for an executive. Certainly, marketing could certainly play more in different arenas, right? But I think beyond the marketing element, I mean, we talked earlier about the recruiting, retention, building a culture. Furthermore, I mean, I even think about the opportunities that I've gotten from LinkedIn, and I would multiply that for an executive, right? You know, the opportunity to go out and follow prolific leaders and learn from them, the opportunity to leverage, you know, doing a show, connecting. You know, I've gotten the opportunity to become a strategic advisor for different organizations as a result of LinkedIn. So there's that individual component and element for a CEO, why they need to be there, because a lot of CEOs, I mean, they may make a move at some time in their career, they may make some connections. So there's that personal element of creation of relationships, networking, but also that unique opportunity to build credibility with a broad audience that they may be interacting with at some time in the future. I feel like anyone not on LinkedIn or not leveraging LinkedIn is almost operating with a tunnel vision. It reminds me of when I long ago worked for an organization, and I had a manager who literally, you know, said that if they started a business today, their first thing that they would invest in would be in the yellow pages. And this was after internet, after, you know, Google. And it just, I feel like if you're not investing in LinkedIn today in some way, personally, professionally, and also in ways that it can make your organization's brand embellished, look better, shine and sparkle, then you're missing out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, change the lens that this isn't LinkedIn. This is networking. It's meeting people. And we never went to one networking event, came away and go, well, that was a waste of time. No, it was always, we'll go back and go back and go back. And then we didn't always go, well, who exactly did you meet and did it become an opportunity? It was like, no, I'm building relationships with people, and then opportunities start to come or referrals start to come from it. I think, to Bob's point, assigning direct causation, if we think of LinkedIn or any social platform, even YouTube, as a channel, it makes us look at it in a light or from a lens that doesn't make it valuable. If we look at it more like, hey, I need to build my reputation, I need to be known by more people, and I need to know more people. And I don't think anybody can argue with that those are good things for your career, for your business, for creating opportunities, for finding new employees, for having, meeting new vendors that could serve you better than your current ones, or any of those things. I mean, it's why we golf with business or we go to cocktail parties. Why? We want to know more people and we want to be known by more people. If you look at that lens, then we can get out of these conversations of, well, what's the ROI? It's like, really, does everything, if everything has to be ROI, then we're going to scrutinize, like, why do you get on that plane? Well, because one of my really great clients is there and they've been with us a couple years and competition is kicking up and we need to go make sure that we're in pole position. But is there a direct ROI right now? I believe that we've over scrutinized ROI around anything digital content, social media, YouTube, LinkedIn, because people were scared about how to use it or they're scared to do it wrong and ruin their reputation. So a lot of the excuses, and I will call them that, they are excuses to not figure it out, are just convenient.
So, hey, in the last, 10, 15 minutes here, let's talk a bit about some specifics, right? Because I think there's a lot of ways to potential, like, Brandon, I'm nowhere near, or even I'm nowhere near active on LinkedIn with posting as you two are, but I am on two shows every week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm out there, I'm just out there in a different way. What are the ways that people can put themselves out there? What are the different ways that you can contribute to that personal brand and build that visibility? It's not just one thing that you have to do or necessarily absolutely have to do. I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah, that's a good. Carson, why don't you? I really like what you do, Carson, because you maximize every single piece of content that you create or you're a part of, and you maximize it. And I see it on Facebook, I see it on Instagram, I see it on TikTok. Obviously, we see it in LinkedIn. Uh, you do a really good job of being everywhere, and qualitatively, I know it works. When I was with you and we had lunch, and I love this story because Carson and I got to go eat somebody's leftover buffet lunch because their meeting was ending and they had leftovers. And as we're walking back to our room, this guy came around a corner and it was like he was all fanboy. He's like, "Oh my gosh, Carson, it's so good to see you." And don't get embarrassed because it's true. You've earned it. Like you've done the work to earn this. And he was so excited to see Carson, and I'm like, "Oh, cool! Like Carson's buddy." And Carson shakes his hand, and I'm like pulling Carson's plate so his food doesn't fall because the guy was so excited to see him. And we start walking away, and I go, "Hey, Carson, who was that?" And he goes, "I don't know." It may not be a tangible ROI, but my gosh, that is huge valuable because that guy knows you. He may refer you. You're top of mind when he needs you. I think he was a Microsoft employee as well. But there's so many good things that come of that. And that was one person. How many thousands of people are out there like that who think of Carson in the same way?
Well, and we have some big offices like in Dallas, and I'll go there and everybody knows who I am. And it's surreal. It's the only type of celebrity I would ever want to be, like a Z-list celebrity where I'm known for certain things and with certain people, but I can still go outside and nobody cares who I am. But in all seriousness, I got to say, like the opportunities that have come from the shows and the content, and don't get me wrong, not everybody's going to love it. I know there's absolutely been people that, I go back to the David Goggins quote, "You're never going to find a hater doing better than you." I mean, there's going to be people that don't want to do the work and they're going to not like you because you're out there, and they're going to say you're being self-promotional and you're doing all this. Well, if I'm not out there tooting the horn of some of the great stories that I feel like I have, nobody's going to do it for me. And the ends justify the means. I have created relationships that never would have existed without social, not to mention over $1 billion in deals that never would have existed without LinkedIn, or the first meeting being from LinkedIn. But job opportunities, relationships, new vendors, like Brandon just said. People, like I jumped on a call yesterday with a brand new vendor and they're like, "Oh, it's the LinkedIn star." And it's like, these people know who you are when you walk into these meetings, which is honestly very helpful because it's a unique differentiator. It's something that not everybody is doing. And I tell people all the time, I know what my strengths are and I know what my strengths are not. And I believe strongly that you can leverage, you were asking about different mediums, Brandon. I looked at where my audience is and also could be, and was really intentional about how I could touch those audiences. Now, I've talked on this show before about how I kind of straddle a line. I work with, people that, consume technology. I work with nonprofits. I've worked in healthcare, but I also work with salespeople, and none of those audiences care about the same messaging. So I've kind of straddled the line, and I try to, I do a lot of career focused things, a lot of leadership focused things that will resonate with, throwing bouquets to all audiences. but the things that you can do with like LinkedIn groups, going out and creating a group, inviting people to that, creating a show, creating a newsletter on LinkedIn. You get tens of thousands of views of some of these articles just by making a post. And that article can go out on LinkedIn as a newsletter. It can go out to my WordPress blog. I can also post it to Facebook or wherever I want, and Twitter, and you name it. And these things can happen in minutes. And the way that you can repurpose some of this content now with AI, I can pull a transcript from something I did 6 months ago and turn it into today's post, tag it with a recent picture, and it gets a lot of hits. And so being able to think strategically and intelligently about how you can put the message out there that represents what you're about, engage the audiences in as many places as possible, build community, like with groups and fostering connections, but also encouraging other people to share and contribute, promoting their posts, going out and commenting like we've talked about on this show. There's so many things that you can do to create genuine relationships, but also establish what you're all about. And I have to say that the results of going down that personal brand path about a decade ago, I don't know that I've made many better decisions in my life other than marrying my wife.
Yeah, and I want to say something, Carson, for a purpose, and I don't mean to embarrass you with this, but I had somebody one time say, I don't get Carson. I don't get what he does on there. And I said, well, what don't you get? And they're like, well, his message and this, and I said, well, how do I say this the right way? I was a little bit direct and maybe a little bit blunt, maybe a little bit borderline rude, because this person as a CEO had zero presence on LinkedIn. Like not zero, but not much. And I said, well, let me ask you this. If you could have Carson speak at an event for your company, would you want him there because he would draw a bunch of people? Well, yeah, that'd be great. And I said, then what don't you understand about what Carson's doing?
Wow.
Right. And I think that's an example for me of people that are scared of doing this LinkedIn thing. I don't think it's so much it's the ego. I think it's confidence. I think it's self-esteem. And even look, I've been a CEO for 25 years, and I'm one of the most insecure people out there at times because it's scary.
Same. We're not telling people to do this to the nth degree either. Nobody, like Tom, you said earlier, like you're not posting all this stuff every single day, but you're doing multiple shows and you're doing it your way. Like, I think that's what we're ultimately saying. Find your way, find your sweet spot, figure out where your audience is. But we're going to absolutely recommend all the channels by which you can explore to potentially meet your audience. And I would say the same thing. I'm very introverted. I have a lot of insecurities, but I've gotten over them over time. Before these things become comfortable muscles, they are very uncomfortable muscles. When I made my first YouTube video, I was terrified. That was back in 2010, and it blew up. All my old coworkers and my, colleagues, they were loving it, and it just encouraged me. It just became, it added momentum. And I would tell you, like, if your social presence today is a tiny little snowball, the way to make it an avalanche is by accumulating momentum, by exploring different mediums that you're comfortable with, learning about them, studying them, trying them. And don't just give up when it doesn't work. We don't give up things and go back to comfortable ways of mediocrity or comfortable ways of failing. We figure it out, like Brandon said earlier.
And I want to quote Carl Lieba, who was our guest. I think, Carson, you were gone. You missed a great episode.
Oh, I was on that show. I was on that episode.
You were? Okay.
Yeah.
When I first, in a public speaking class in college, we were told, just picture everybody in their underwear, which I don't know if you can get away with that anymore. But the idea behind it was take the pressure off that they're just human beings out there. They're just like you. Carl really impacted me when he talked about, I just think about everybody being the 8-year-old version of themselves. They're just an 8-year-old version of themselves. bring that to LinkedIn as well. Just be yourself and think about your audience as their 8-year-old version of themselves. Because when we were 8 years old, everybody was our friend. Everybody liked us. We liked everybody. And, unless something happened, you fought over an eraser or something. But overall, you were friends with everybody and you thought everyone liked you. If you can bring that into this LinkedIn thing, that's half the battle. There's a bunch of stuff about imposter syndrome, and I don't talk about it a whole lot, but it doesn't mean I don't think it's real. I think it's the most important thing in the world to get over. But by talking about imposter syndrome isn't it. I think we talk about the value proposition, we talk about strategies, and we talk about what is your strategy that works for you. And let's start there, and we can start small and work our way up. You don't have to do a show day one. You don't have to publish every single day, but just figure out how to start, because it's like being in your entry level job and your boss tells you need to go to networking events because you need to go out and meet our customers. And you just go, no, networking events don't work. BS.
So, as we wrap up here, episode number 99, I think today's episode, it's interesting. I was thinking back, we started with social selling for newbies, right? Then we changed it to social selling 2.0, and then we changed to mastering modern selling over the last 100. But everything we've talked about today, I think, is a culmination of pretty much everything that we've been talking about for the 99 episodes.
It's profound.
No, but it's true, right? When you think, it's like it all comes back to, I think, this foundational element. I think we've got the point. As we move ahead to the next 100 and the next 100 guests that we've got queued up here going forward, everyone's going to bring a bit of a different take and a different perspective, whether it's sales management or sales or whatever it is that they're bringing to the table. But everything I think that they're going to talk about will be enhanced and is enhanced by the things we just went through today and got here. And I think we've got the point. I think we really made the point. So,
And it is a foundation. You guys remember when we started, we said, hey, the three of us are going to do this show. You guys remember with social selling for newbies?
Yeah.
That's when I was saying, I don't want the word social selling. And we have Carson's the producer and known for sales. Tom has a marketing book, and I'm like that personal branding, networking person. And I hated the word social selling because it brings images of pitch slapping and automation and things like that. And I've been very resistant to it. And I'm okay with that now. It's been mastering modern selling. But the foundation of it, just like everything in sales, it's always, if your personality sucks, you're not getting anywhere with your customers. If you don't know how to start a conversation, you're never going to have a conversation. And the foundation of all that in this modern selling or this digital selling world is your personal brand.
That's right. It is modern selling. It's the foundation of modern selling.
I see you everywhere, and I feel like I already know you. And we have a little bit of time, don't we? I've heard two people over the last several months.
Looking back, so our longest episode, I had to look this up. It was Donald Kelly, and it was 1 hour, 8 minutes. So we technically, by that barometer, we've got 10 more minutes.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
I would love your guys' take on this. I've heard 2 times now in probably the last 3 months when I say, it's the I see you everywhere, and I feel like I already know you. Twice now I've heard I don't want everyone to see me everywhere because then they'll think I'm not working.
Wow, you've heard that?
I've heard it twice now, and I'm like, oh, really? Like I'm scratching my head going, really? That's the reason why?
The best way to calm that? Results. Nobody's ever questioned me, and I'm everywhere. I had somebody tell me one time, every single time I pull up LinkedIn, there you are. How do you find time for this stuff? But nobody's ever complained about my results.
There you go.
Carson, you pop up on my Apple Watch 2 to 3 times a day.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So, see, and I
top of mind. It goes back to what someone told me years ago, literally 2013, at this small consultant firm where honestly, like one of the executives tried to steal my biggest lead and claim it as their own. But one of these guys literally said, like, use LinkedIn. It'll use it to find ways to stay top of mind. And that always stuck with me, because people know you. And I made a post, my gosh, what was it, like 2 weeks ago, about how I had not been feeling well. And like, I've had so many people reach out, and I'm doing better. I'm not 100%, but thank you to everyone who's reached out. It's amazing. Like, people follow your journey. They know you as a person, even if you don't know them or know them well. It's just unbelievable. And Bob's dreaming about us.
Yeah. Sorry, Tom and I started laughing while you're talking. We saw Bob's.
Yeah, I love it.
Bob, we dream about you too, my friend. We do.
All right. Well, excellent points today. Excellent episode. I'm really looking forward to the next 100. That guest lineup is like, man.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, just blown away by some of the roster there. So yeah, just this gets better and better. And seriously, we appreciate everybody in the audience that shows up week after week, shows up asking questions, saying, provocative and poignant comments. Like, if you got suggestions on the next 100, shoot us a note, make a comment, tag people you want to see on the show. It's amazing. Like, we've approached some people that are pretty prominent in sales, and nobody turns us down. I mean, people want to be on the show. It's amazing to think how far we've come in 99 episodes.
Yeah. And if you're on the podcast, we honestly, we've kind of neglected promoting the podcast as much, because we really enjoy the comments and all that. But if you're on the podcast, the next 100 episodes, we are going to focus on it more. We actually have an advertising campaign that we're going to be doing to help us get more reach in front of people. But if you'd be so kind to help us, give us a review, screenshot it, share it with somebody, and say, hey, these guys are a bunch of dorks, but they're saying some good stuff. Whatever, we'll take it. We'd appreciate it. We're just three knuckleheads trying to have fun and figure this out. That's when we start for social selling for newbies. We're all newbies. We're all trying to figure this thing out. Let's go have some fun doing it and just create conversation. So if that resonates with you, we'd love for you to join the community and be a part of it.
Here.
All right. So Daniel Disney next week, number 100. We'll kick off the next century of shows. Carson, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah. Thank you both, gentlemen. I learned a lot from you guys, and it's been a fun run. Let's keep doing it. And to our audience and everyone.